So today we are continuing a series based on Reverend Dr. Gary Simmons' book, The Eye of the Storm. And the core concept that we are working with throughout this series is the idea that no one and nothing is against you. Now that idea may have been your experience in your human life, or it may not have been your experience up till now. But let's start by allowing the possibility that that can be a true statement for us, that no one and nothing is against us. Now, I understand that nothing is against me can be true because in every circumstance that I have that arises in my life, I get to choose how I see the situation. Do I see that other person or that condition as being something that is against me? Or can I see that person and that situation as something that is for me? Each one of us has the power to live in the paradigm of whatever happens to us in our lives, it can be for us. Because we are free to choose what story we tell ourselves. And what we choose, of course, creates the world that we perceive around us. And that world then mirrors back to us what we are making that moment in our life mean. And our life is a feedback system that shows the intent that we are holding for our lives. We choose whether or not we experience the event as for us or against us. And in The Eye of the Storm, Gary Simmons suggests that we will not be able to align with this concept of for us or against us until we can live from our authentic self, our authentic being. So, what do we mean by authentic being? In Unity, we often call this concept the Christ consciousness. My personal spiritual work, A Course in Miracles, calls this the sonship of the Christ. And Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, co-founders of Unity, taught about our authentic being, and they used the metaphysical terms individuality and personality. So the metaphysical idea of personality is our individual ego self. This is the self that we have created since birth to live in this world as a unique human being. It is the characteristics that we identify as me. So I identify as David. And I am this and this and this and this. And that is unique from anybody else. That is my personality. Reverend Paul Hasselbeck writes in the book Heart-Centered Metaphysics that personality is, and I quote, the attitude of mind that has distorted our true uniqueness into a sense of separateness. It consists of elements that make up our earthly persona, our ever-changing sense of self. So one of my spiritual gurus, Ram Dass, called it the somebody training. So personality is not our authentic being. Our authentic being is found in the metaphysical term individuality. Individuality consists of the characteristics that come from our Christ mind. The spiritual self that was created by God to be whole and complete and in the same likeness as divine spirit. our individuality is expressed through our humanness, and sometimes we catch glimpses of that, like in the persona of Jesus, or of Mother Teresa, or Gandhi, or Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. You may have seen glimpses of it in a beloved other, a mother or a father. The Revealing Word, a metaphysical dictionary of terms compiled from Charles Fillmore's writings, defines individuality as our true self, that which is undivided from God, our spiritual identity. So I want to explore this idea of our authentic being through a story that I'm going to take a metaphysical approach to, and that is the story of Don Quixote, the man of La Mancha. And I love stories because I found that stories often take that truth and speak it directly to my heart. And the story of Don Quixote is one that does that for me. So the book by the Spanish author Miguel Cervantes was made into a musical play and a movie that went by the title of Man of La Mancha. And I hear this story as two aspects of one man, Alonso Quijana. So Alonso Quijana is this elderly country gentleman that lives in Spain, in the province of La Mancha, and he sees the world as a world that has been bereft of all chivalry. That is a world that is filled with injustice, and it burns in his heart. And in his other persona, that of Don Quixote, he is a knight errant. The knight whose only purpose is to dream and to uphold the rightness found in chivalry, no matter the cost. So for me, these two characters found in one person represent the metaphysical ideas of personality and individuality. Alonso is the personality as created and identified by the world. Don Quixote represents the individuality, the God-created self. So, as the curtain arises on the story, we find that the elderly Alonso Quijana has so despaired of life that he has retreated from daily reality and in his mind has become this knight-errant, Don Quixote. And we find Don Quixote riding across the countryside with his squire, Sancho, on a quest to return chivalry to the world and to be the champion of the right. Now, I should probably note at this point that holding the intention of being the champion of the right implies that there is wrong that needs to be righted. And that then opens us to the possibility that something or someone will be against us. And this proves to be true in the story, because Pancho and Quixote come upon a windmill. But instead of a windmill, Don Quixote sees a four-armed giant who has been terrorizing the countryside, and he charges on his steed to attack that giant. And if you remember the scene in the movie, he becomes entangled in one of the sails of the windmill, and it throws him off his horse up into the air and then into the ditch beside the road. And Don Quixote, as he's scrambling back to his feet out of the ditch, explains to Pancho that his mortal enemy, the enchanter, has transformed the giant into a windmill, causing his defeat. Something was against him. So I see in this scene the illustration of how we sometimes deal with conflict. We first have a belief and that belief becomes the lens through which we see the world. And our belief creates a story that we tell ourselves that establishes the meaning that we give to our experience, and then we see what we expect to see, and we react according to our belief. That's the story we tell ourselves. We do like Don Quixote, and we see giants in place of windmills. And we perceive an enemy, and we attack. And we make our experience be about the story that we have created without any idea that we are the ones creating it. The windmill was not against Don Quixote until Don Quixote chose to make it so. So, the duality of personality and individuality is also played out in another character, Aldonza. Aldonza is the inn's serving maid and a part-time prostitute. And Aldonza is doing what so many of us in our lives do. She is just trying to survive in the world. And Aldonza has really good evidence that everyone and everything in the world is against her. So the character Aldonza, again, is our personality. What we believe we are. How our human identity has been influenced and been shaped by the events and the other people in our lives. But there is another dimension to Aldonza, Dulcinea. Dulcinea is our divine individuality that comes forth when it is seen by another who can hold to that truth until we can accept it for ourselves. It is through the belief held by Don Quixote that Aldonza slowly transforms throughout the story into Dulcinea, an authentic being. The dynamics of this story reflect reality. Aldonza becomes Dulcinea because Don Quixote saw the divine Dulcinea in her, and in everything he did, he related to and engaged Dulcinea. It was his belief and his vision that caused Dulcinea to have the courage to become Aldonza, and have the courage to become Dulcinea. At the very end of the story, the situation becomes reversed. The world has reclaimed Alonso Quijana, and he is lying frail and ill in his bed, dying. And it is the vision and the belief of Dulcinea that empowers then the end of the story. When Pancho calls her Aldonza, she refuses and says, "No, I am Dulcinea." And she in turn reminds Alonso Quijana of his vision and the truth of his inner authentic being. She comes to the bedside of a bewildered and uncertain Quijana, and she helps him remember his impossible dream. And you know the words. To dream the impossible dream. To fight the unbeatable foe. To bear with unbearable sorrow. To run where the brave dare not go. to right the unrightable wrong, to love, pure and chaste, from afar, to try when your arms are too weary to reach the unreachable star. Having Dulcinea hold to the belief and see the truth alive in him, allows Alonso to arise and then to die as his authentic self, Don Quixote de la Mancha. I love this story. You can't tell, right? I enjoy this story because in one way this story is about our soul's struggle with this concept. No one and nothing is against us. All of the conflicts that Alonso and Aldonza experience in the course of the story can be perceived as not against them. Even when they are violent and harmful, they can be understood as for them in the sense that the conflict helps them to remember who they came here to be, their authentic self. You too have come here to be an authentic self, your God-created individuality. When we are our authentic self, we manifest certain qualities of being. And the first time I heard this idea was from the author and the life coach Maria Namath, and she called them standards of integrity. And then I heard them from Dr. Gary Simmons, who named them as who I have come here to be. And they were part of the quantum living process. And I offer them to you today as qualities of being. So if you would put that slide up. And you all have inserts, or if you don't have a bulletin, you should have received a paper copy of this. So if you don't have one, wave your hand and Muhammad will bring you one. Qualities of being that our soul has come into this lifetime to manifest. Now, Maria Namath has compiled this list over years of workshops. And these are core qualities that arose over and over again when people described their higher self. And we're going to follow an intuitive process that will allow each of us to select one of these qualities as an aspect of our authentic self. Ready? Ready to try it? All right. So it's going to be a little inner work. So I invite you to, for a moment, to close your eyes. To again take a breath and go back into that heart space where you are an expression of that divine light and love, that you are connected to God. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. Deep and intentional, and let it out. Now I want you to recall a time when you felt you were truly expressing your highest and your best self. Recall that moment. Who was there? Where were you? What did it feel like? Recall that feeling and that experience. And ask yourself, what is meaningful to me in this experience? And then ask, what is at the very center of what I am feeling? What is at the very center of what I am being? And then take a breath, and when you're ready, look at the list. Take a moment to contemplate each attribute. Ask yourself, does reading this word warm my heart? And as you read the list, there will be a quality that will just call out to you saying, yes, yes, this is who I am. So find that quality. And if you have a writing instrument, you can write that quality on that line at the bottom of your piece of paper. But if not, connect with it. Has a quality called to you already? You need another moment to find one. What I want you to do now is an act of bravery. I want you to turn to a neighbor and share your quality by saying, I have come here to be, and then state your attribute, and then listen to them share theirs. So go ahead and do that. How does it feel to share with somebody else who you have come here to be? Good? Good. So there is an aspect of living from our authentic being that becomes what we call conscious doing. And for me, the secret lies in what Don Quixote and Dulcinea provided for each other. Don Quixote did not see Aldonza the tavern maid. He saw an innocent, strong, compassionate lady, Dulcinea. And she in turn did not see an old, crazy, dying man. She saw a knight of truth that lived to raise others into their truth. In each other, they saw the truth of who the other had come to be. And in so doing, they empowered that other to live as their authentic self. My personal spiritual work, A Course in Miracles, teaches me that the greatest gift that we can give another is to see only their divine nature. That is the act of conscious doing. What I give to you, I give to myself. What I see in you, I see in myself. So authentic being leads to conscious doing, and conscious doing comes out of who we truly are. So we are called to transform our lives, to see our sisters and our brothers as their authentic selves. And in so doing, the world is no longer against us. It is for us. And we live from who we have come here to be. Namaste.